Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing view of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts to get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. We are live on a President's Day edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. We're live on all platforms known to man, and we're here in beautiful Denver, Colorado. iHeartRadio, YouTube, X, Twitch, TikTok, and Instagram. That's where you can like and follow and subscribe. We've got a huge list on a President's Day weekend for all of you guys, as of course, one of the best in the business. He's got his own experience show. Former Carolina Panthers cornerback Todd Smith's going to be joining us here on the show, and my good man with all the Chicago sports, because I need to know what is going on with the Bears. My good friend Mikey Hughes of the Shy Kid is going to be joining us as well here as part of the show. But man, we've got a lot going on. I just watched last night, the NBA All-Star game, and I'm going to get into that a little later on in the bottom half of the hour. But I wanted to bring this up before bringing Rod Smith up on here, but just for a few minutes so first of all, a lot of us nowadays in this day and age with the NFL, a lot of us tend to think we're just all optometrists. We all kind of know what these players are going to basically look like. We could predict their future of being NFL superstars by the time they come out of college and they get drafted. So reports are, and thanks to all of my good colleagues at Sportsway Network, that apparently the news now that broke out about Caleb Williams is one of the analysts who basically, he's a former NFL scout, basically looked at every piece of film, looked at every part of Caleb Williams's play, and said straight up, he's probably going to be a bust. So one of the parts of it, and Daniel Kelly is the former scout in the NFL, basically mentioned that Caleb Williams, in every snap that he took in 22 and 23 with USC, basically gave his entire opinion of what he is. Yes, he is loaded with God-given raw arm strength and elite ability to create and extend, in which is drawn to him, but he's underdeveloped in the finer points of the position. His skill set doesn't translate well to the next level. The NFL game is about quick time to throw, precise downfield ball placement, and ball security. The only box he checks is ball security, improving from 35 pass breakups in 22 to 15 in 23. But yeah, we can all be optometrists and say Caleb Williams might end up being a bust. Listen, my biggest thing when quarterbacks come in, because this year, compared to 2020, that we got. We had 5 quarterbacks. One of them that was taken late in the second round, that was Jalen Hurts. But all those quarterbacks in 2020, we were almost skeptical about Tua not succeeding because he had Brian Flores, a defensive coach. Once they benched him more than once, they were like, this is not going to work with Tua. But then Mike McDaniel comes in and rejuvenates, and he just makes him such a premier passer. Coaching and where you land is everything. That's what's important about this. So Caleb Williams, if people are thinking that he is a bust, what are we to say? You know what we're doing? We're disrespecting the craft that Lincoln Riley has provided with all these quarterbacks. So we're just going to say Baker Mayfield, who was a Heisman Trophy winner, #1 overall pick, was not part of, Lincoln Riley's build, or Kyler Murray, who was a Heisman Trophy #1 overall pick. He luckily got Jalen Hurts at the time when he transferred from Alabama to Oklahoma, and he learned both sides of the entire playbook, from Saban's to Riley's. And yet, also, one of the quarterbacks, former quarterback, who's an analyst now for ESPN, Chris Sims, which, listen, my thing is Chris Sims, decent enough of a quarterback, but we all kind of know the history with him, saying Jalen Hurts is overrated. In what world do we really kind of put that together? I'm like, listen, just because Jalen Hurts lost a great coordinator in Shane Steichen and lost Jonathan Gannon, a most trustworthy DC, we're just going to basically say he's overrated because he had 2 coordinators that clearly didn't work, and now he's going to go through a mulligan of coordinators with Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio? I mean, come on. Jalen Hurts is the best thing that you could have. You couldn't do this with Carson Wentz. You couldn't do this with Nick Foles. So Jalen Hurts is your best option. So how can we say he's overrated? Look, the draft has ultimately almost 9 to 10 quarterbacks going into it. Let me just break off the ones that I know that are going to be late rounders. Joe Milton, Sam Hartman. I would also say there's a handful. And then the top 5 everybody's talking about is Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels. I can't predict the future with all 5 of these quarterbacks, but I do hope that the 10 organizations as the top 10 lists, I hope Chicago knows to pivot offense. If you're going to take Caleb Williams, you have got to do the right thing to make this offense work. But if not, and you're keeping Justin Fields and build to him, then you better give him a premier receiver in Marvin Harrison. That's the only way you're going to make this offense work, because they've got a weapon in DJ Moore. They've got Cole Kmet. So this offense could be very premier if you just stick to the script and you pivot. The other part is, look at New England. New England, the relationship between Mac Jones and, the way the Patriots carried this out with Bill Belichick, I know most of this was Belichick's, but still, they're not that superstar at quarterback. They're probably going to end up taking one. The Commanders is an interesting one, because even though, to me, I kind of feel bad for Sam Howell, but the fact is, because he's been sacked more than any quarterback in the league last year, and then at the same time, what do you got? You've got weapons. You've got a dual threat running back core. And then eventually you're going to need to get a tight end, but you got to fix that offensive line. If my quarterback's getting sacked multiple times, it's an offensive line issue. I got to beef that up. So, and then here's the other thing. You don't have to worry about defense, because Dan Quinn, who specialized in defense, he will find his guys. He may not find a Micah Parsons, but he'll find something super close to it, because you already lost both your pass rushers. So to me, I'm just like, I can't predict the future for these quarterbacks. But the only thing I can hope for is where you land and your coaching style. It matters in this league. So I'm hoping the best of success, because people are saying, well, we're not sure if Michael Penix is going to be the right answer. Atlanta, you had a lefty quarterback, Mike Vick. Anybody? He could be Mike Vick 2.0, but with a stronger arm, and he's very, very capable in the pocket. Or Denver, if this thing don't work with Russell Wilson, hey, there's Bo Nix. I've got weapons. I've got Sean Payton. He likes a guy that loves to work with the coaching style he has. But to me, this is why I'm like, these quarterbacks going into this draft, I hope the best of luck for every single one of them, and I hope they prove me wrong. I'm not here to basically say, well, he's going to be a bust. He's going to be a superstar. I want them all to work. I don't want them to basically set themselves up to fail. But that's where you got to look at your organization. You got to look at your front office, and you got to be straight with them, because these scouts and these general managers, they go out and they're the big time voices in that war room, and they are going to make the decisions. They're the movers and shakers to make this franchise relevant again. So you got to make the right choice. You got to make the right decision. So former NFL cornerback, drafted in 1992, has been a part of multiple NFL teams, but mostly has spent a lot of his years in Carolina. Super excited, and I'm so glad for him to take the time and to come onto the show. So joining us here, former cornerback Rod Smith, joining up on the show. I mean, that's the thing, Rod, is just like we all kind of feel like we're optometrists up to this point. I'm like, how could we possibly predict these quarterbacks' futures? I mean, this is just pure insanity.
You know what? I listened to your open or the last couple minutes, and I really think it was really well said. It doesn't factor in people's thinking nearly enough the environment a quarterback is in, right? I mean, we're still talking about, a 21-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 23-year-old kid, right? And if you put them with the right coach and a couple weapons, and a decent left tackle who's going to have a little bit of time, and some open receivers that at least on 60% of plays, the first 3 reads, somebody should be available, right? I mean, give them that. You give them an exponentially greater chance to have success than, I think, we know this intuitively, but looking at like the Panthers situation, there is no doubt that Bryce Young was the number 1 player on everybody's board for a reason, right? But you put him in a situation where he's not being protected, and his number 1 option, is about my age. Well, not exactly, but okay, but a 35-year-old number 1 option. And you're going to have a disaster on your hands, despite what kind of coaching you offer. And I think you hit it on the head. If they commit Chicago to Caleb, they certainly need to. It would be beneficial for everybody to make sure that he has as many weapons as possible. They absolutely, like you said, they absolutely have to pivot to offense and literally spend the next draft, maybe 2 drafts, almost completely focused on building that side of the ball. That doesn't just mean draft. That may be training some picks and getting some veterans, but making sure that he can stand on 2 feet for 1001, 1002, 1003, not get hit in the face. All right. And then make sure that he has at least an option and a half, a full 1.5 options, right? If it's not DJ Moore, the doubling him, fine. Then one of my next 2 reads has to be open. Not both of them, but one. If I can't find the number 2 receiver, I got to be able to get to the tight end or running back.
Yep.
If not, you got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, no, 100%. And think about it this way, is that Chicago made the move to where they've gotten rid of a lot of their big-time pass rushers. They got rid of Khalil Mack. They gotten rid of Roquan Smith, and now, he's making a huge hit in Baltimore. But here's the other thing that stands out to me, and where part of this with the coaching staff, when Luke Getsy got fired, because Eberflus, what he worked on is he worked on his side of the ball. And you saw that ID when Montez Sweat got traded to Chicago, and in the first 2 games, he's already had 6 sacks. So it's just like, that's not a problem. And Chicago has always been known for great defense. So, I feel like, you got to pivot to offense in this way, because the only way you got to do it is you got to be scoring more than 25 points a game. I mean, that's kind of the real reality now. And so in the end, I look at Chicago. I honestly love a couple of their pieces on offensive line. I think Tevin Jenkins really has finally showed up, and he is so good. And then eventually you're going to need to start building up some depth. So that's going to be super important for Chicago. But I want to bring it back to this, because since you mentioned it with Carolina, so you've been a part of this organization in the past. And my thing with Carolina is I want Bryce Young to succeed. A lot of people are like, well, his size is going to really be a factor to whether or not he really does translate to be a franchise quarterback. But here's the other thing. When Frank Reich got hired, I felt like he's a former quarterback. He's a good quarterback whisperer. I mean, we've watched, Phillip Rivers. We've watched Andrew Luck. We've watched Carson Wentz. He built these guys. But then eventually, I mean, look, the stuff with Dave Tepper, I would rather just focus on football than what's happening in the upper stands. But my thing is now,
Right.
Dave Canales comes in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so from your perspective up on this, how successful should Dave Canales really kind of get this offense rolling? Because they're going to need a lot. They're going to need probably some more wide receiver help because, I mean, yeah, Adam Thielen, I can't rely on him majority of the time. And we know it was a harder sacrifice getting rid of DJ Moore to Chicago, but you needed it for the top pick. So how else does Carolina really have to kind of tackle this draft and the free agency come this offseason?
Well, I mean, they need everything on offense, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they're okay at running back, but offensive line needs help. They need weapons on the outside. They're solid at tight end, but I mean, I'm a big believer in I'm so funny. My confirmation bias is from Bill Parcells, 100%, right? I see the game as much as I can through his eyes, and you build. It's funny. Bill Parcells said to me one time at 5:00 in the morning on the treadmill, he says, I asked him, "Hey, coach, listen, how do you draft players? I mean, if you got a second round rating on a corner, a tight end, a tackle, how do you decide? What's your decision-making process for deciding who you draft?" And he goes, "You know what, Rod? Here's the key thing you need to know. Number one, a good big football player is better than a good small football player."
Yeah.
I went, wow. Okay. I mean, it's real simple. So if you have a second round grade on a tackle and a second round grade on a wide receiver, we're taking the tackle, right? If you got a first round grade on a tackle and a first round grade on a safety, we're taking the tackle. We're taking the so I'd like to see the Panthers build long term, which is inside out, which is from both line of scrimmage out, starting with the offensive line first and the defensive line first, and then we'll fill in on the outside. Unless you can catch a deal and maybe get another wide receiver, that'd be great. We need one badly.
Yeah.
But I'm even okay. A lot of people wouldn't like this, fans, but I'm even okay struggling a little bit longer to build out that offensive line. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because once we get that, top 15 in the league, now we can cut the quarterback loose. But last year, let me try to be brief about this. The thing last year that I saw, and I went to a bunch of games and got down there on the field, I'm standing there watching it. So that perspective, I mean, on the field watching the guy throw passes, I'm telling you, I mean, literally 50% of the plays, he's going 1 read, 2 read, 3 read, 4 read. If there's a 5, I'm trying to find 5, and he's keeping his back foot on the spot. Right? He is literally, his back foot is on the spot. He is not moving. And a lot of fans don't understand what that may not understand what that means, but it means that he is 100% dedicated to executing what the coach wants him to do. And he's showing his linemen the absolute utmost respect in his own personal sacrifice. I'm going to stand on this spot, and I trust you guys to protect me on this spot. Even though I've been sacked 6 times, I'm still going to stand on this spot. I'm going to go through my reads, and if I get sacked, then I just get sacked. But I'm not going to leave the pocket after reads 1's unopened, 2's unopened. Guys panic, they scramble, right? Yep. Justin Fields, he's better now, but Justin Fields used to be a 1 read, 2 read, I'm out of here guy, right?
Right.
All right. So Bryce has the physical toughness, and it's trying to develop the trust with his linemen and his coaching staff that if you call a play and I'm supposed to stand on this thing 7 yards deep, I'm going to stand on that spot and make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reads. And if I get sacked, that's on you guys. You know what I mean? Rather than running out. So I think he's showed incredible toughness last year. And with a little bit of protection, I still think it can be a problem. Can he hold up over time with his size? We'll see. But again, like Parcells said, the best indicator of future success is what? Past success. Player of the year coming out of high school, player of the year coming out of college. I mean, do the math,
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is because Bryce Young, I watch so many of his tapes in Alabama, and just the kind of throws that he makes when he's not under duress. It's unbelievable. That's why that's the hope for Carolina. And when you get more weapons in, and at the same time, it just kind of felt like the run game was very it was very streaky because even though when you look at Miles Sanders and the time he spent in Philadelphia, I mean, injuries was kind of the thing with it, but at the same time, there was just inconsistency. So it's like now you really got to build a little from scratch, but kind of rejuvenate this offense at the same time. So part of this reason is there's going to be sacrifices involved. And the names, I'm sure you know, Brian Burns is one of them. There's a couple of other key spots that they're going to have to maybe trade some pieces on, or they might have to move up and start getting younger. But I mean, I look at it. Derek Brown, very much an offensive disruptor up on the line. And then I look at J.C. Horn, and I'm just kind of like, well, I'm getting a stopper. Because I loved it when they would build their defense around like Shaq Thompson, and even when you get Jeremy Chin out there. Mm-hmm. So it's going to have to be at this point. They're going to have to make some sacrifices on defense, right?
Yeah, I mean, it appears that way. And I don't know if they've gotten the right price for Burns yet. But if they get it, that's obviously the number one piece that they have to trade and try to develop some talent on offense. And again, like everybody's worth trading, right? I mean, for the right amount, right? So it depends on what the offer is. You know what I mean? I mean, Brian's a great player, and we know that edge rusher is what you got: quarterback, left tackle. Depending on who you talk to, Matthew look at interior defensive lineman, rush end. I mean, those. So if you're looking at the third most important position, most impactful position in football that Brian plays, which increases his value. But, unless we get like for like, he's going to be our guy for a little while. But I mean, like you said, the Carolina Panthers absolutely need to focus full stop on offense. And I think focusing up front will optimize their returns a little faster.
Yeah, absolutely. So a kind of a question for you, and I'd love to get your input upon this, because as somebody who is a former corner, I look at this league right now, and I would say the toughest position to really fill the void nowadays is corner, because the cornerbacks I used to watch years ago, I loved watching Quentin Jammer. I loved watching a lot of these shutdown corners, man. And it's just like nowadays, because the league has pivoted to offense so much, I'm looking at a lot of these receivers. I mean, these guys they're speedy like Tyreek Hill. These guys are big-time route runners like Keenan Allen. And then you've got the size and length of like some guys that are out there. Like even when I watch DeAndre Hopkins, how, in your perspective, watching this league transition, how difficult has it been to really kind of find that star corner? Because I look at right now some corners like Sauce Gardner and Christian Gonzalez. It's kind of hard now to kind of find that really good corner because teams are looking everywhere to try to fill that void.
You hit it on the head when you said, to start this whole answer here, that the league is pivoted to offense, right? As offense becomes less encumbered, you're finding more athletes that could play wide out rather than corner are playing wide out. You know what I mean? Like a guy like me now would probably play wide out rather than corner. I don't have great hands. I still don't have great hands. But just being an athlete and having speed and athleticism, there's more value getting that guy on the offensive side than the defensive side now. So you're seeing kind of like a talent drain from the corner position over to a wide receiver. On all levels coming up, and in that obviously there's just less guys that are absolutely shut down corners now than in the past. I think that's the reason why, because it's just there's just more value on that offense now, the way the rules are, right? I mean, back in my day, you could dump guys on their head and hit the quarterback in the face and all that kind of stuff like that, and kind of mitigate some of the passing. But now, you can't touch them, you can't. Which is better for the game. I'm not arguing that it's absolutely the right thing to do when players are bigger, faster, stronger, and you have to mitigate their contacts so that they don't kill each other. That's the truth, right? So right. I don't think it's like we want someone to take us. I think it's more of a, how do we protect ourselves and protect the game long term? And I think it's the right move. All right. But yeah, I think it's a talent drain. They're just guys moving. That guy that, like Rod Smith is a freshman at Notre Dame playing wide receiver, maybe stays at wide receiver for 4 years rather than switch over to corner versus back then they're like, hey, you're a corner, get out of here. You know what I mean? We got to, but now you probably keep Rod Smith at wide receiver, even though he's got the worst hands in the league. All right.
Right. Yeah. And think about it this way, like the development, especially when you get wide receivers, coaches, you get guy. I mean, think of it this way. I mean, I looked at, because everybody wanted to put Quentin Johnston in, the back burner. And I'm just like, whoa, timeout. I'm not gonna condemn a guy who didn't have, like, at the same time, the head coaching thing was an absolute mess. And at the same time, I'm not going to condemn him because of the fact that, first of all, it's his rookie season. What I expect is if you develop in the second, third year, that's where the guaranteed contract comes from. So in comes Jim Harbaugh, and let's say he develops him and he starts catching the ball left and right, then people are going to forget about his rookie season. That's usually what happens. They're going to forget your worst, and they're going to basically say, you know what? He's playing at his best right now, and I would rather take him right now at this point. That's kind of the development, right? So for all of our audiences, because anytime I have former players, I love the experience. I love the journey roads. For you especially, because drafted in 92 and at the same time playing in an environment like Carolina, it was a new franchise. It was something that was like you had to build a new culture, right? So you get big time guys you played around like Kevin Green, Sam Mills, and you even had Musa Muhammad, a wide receiver that was up out there, and Kerry Collins. What was that experience like for you? Because when you look at defenses nowadays, and Carolina, I watched them for years where I would watch Julius Peppers go in and he's just annihilating offensive players, man. And it's just like, what was kind of that philosophy in Carolina for our offenses or for our audiences to really experience that?
Yeah, it was fantastic. And just for the record, so I don't confuse anybody, like I was a second rounder to the Patriots. I was there for 3 years, 2 years under Bill Parcells. I mean, I don't want to say the best 2 years, but a very rewarding time playing with Parcells and that Patriot way, getting that whole thing started. The worst team in the league, 2-14 as a freshman, as a rookie. And we get Bledsoe and Parcells come in, and 2 years later we're in the playoffs. And I knew that they were going to be in the Super Bowl. I mean, when I found out I was leaving for Carolina, the first pick in the expansion draft, which is great, that's awesome. I cried. I learned very few things that made me cry. I cried like a baby. I don't want to leave this team. I was a starter. It was great. I knew they were going to win the Super Bowl. But being in Carolina was fantastic too, and a very unique experience. Because in every team you're on, there's always seniority, right? There's guys that have been there 5 years, guys that have been there 10 years or whatever, and they know where to go, where to live, where the nearest Dunkin' Donuts is, which rookies are going to get the donuts that week or the coffee. Like there's a whole cascade of seniority that helps inform the decisions that the younger guys make, right? I'm going to say that with play.
Yeah.
Okay, so they help us make good decisions, or decisions at least. So we get to Carolina. It's just a bunch of guys from different teams. There's no seniority. There's nobody that's been there 2 years, 3 years. I can tell you, hey, do this, go here, live there, call this agent, like do this. So we're all in this thing together. And I think Jay Richardson did a phenomenal job by putting us in small groups, condensed groups, and keeping us together as much as possible. We played in Clemson that first year. And we would drive down the night before on a team bus and go down as a team. But that bus ride and being in the hotel with your guys really helped us bond quickly. And then on the way back on those bus rides back to Charlotte, you could bring up to like 5 guests. You could bring your grandmother and your kids, and so like everybody got to know everybody's family. You know what I mean? And significant others and all that. So it really galvanized the team, and I think it led to our success in '96. Playing for the NFC Championship game, losing to the Packers, but having a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Oh man, I mean, and think about it this way. I mean, you had Dom Capers as the head coach, and that was a guy that, like, again, a lot of head coaches, you see their philosophy, you see how like their build is. I mean, that was definitely a team that was just like, once the expansion happened, and then it was like, okay, now we got to start building that culture. That is just something special, because even when we look at today's game, I mean, even if we thought of, the NFL was going to expand at some point, right? I mean, it ultimately comes from not just the location, but the quality you're bringing in to the point of this is the culture we want to build so that our fan base can grow bigger and stronger than ever, because that's literally everything. I mean, that's kind of how it was in Carolina starting that fan base, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Having guys, the tip of the spear being guys like Sam Mills and, like you mentioned, Kevin Green and Lamar Lathan and Eric Davis and these guys, Brett Maxey. We just had amazing veterans in leadership on our ball club. Great job by the personnel team, bringing in a bunch of not just good football players. They were good football players, but they were great people. And really guys that went out of their way to talk to the young guys and share their ideas and their successes and how to be a professional football player. I think as much as the level of talent had to do with our early success in Carolina, it was as much as dependent on the quality of the people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, to me personally, I've only been in Charlotte once. I actually had a layover because I was on a cruise from going to Bahamas, and our layover back to Vegas, we had to stop up in Charlotte. So I stopped at Charlotte's airport, and I see Carolina Panthers everywhere with Cam Newton and all that. But then at the same time, my family's like, "Hey, there's a chicken place right here. You want to go to Bojangles?" I'm like, "All right." Hey, I'm always good for some Southern cooking, and at the same time, love the experience of it. I'm very much a traveler. I like to go to places, experience, the culture and the people, and I mean, it's such a great, fantastic feeling, right? So, two quick questions before letting you go. So obviously, this draft, there is a lot of young kids that are going to be coming in here, starting their careers, and like I said before, I hope every one of them have the path for success, because we see guys that are either the number one overall pick or they're like Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, who apparently seems to be relevant with the 49ers as long as you got Kyle Shanahan. But if you looking at this, I don't know if you've evaluated with a lot of players lately, but is there someone that you've looked at in mind that you're just like, you see the character, you see the work ethic and what they put together? If there's somebody on your radar to look out for.
It's funny. I watched the draft shows and trying to keep up with all the players. It's funny, about Caleb Williams and him not improving in a lot of statistics over the last 2 years, but the one he has improved in the most is his pass breakups and his interceptions. He's getting better at ball security. And what's funny about this is that, and this goes back to Bill Parcells again. Bill Parcells says, and this is the quick story. So Bill Parcells used to get in at 5 o'clock in the morning and do like an hour on the treadmill. I mean, not real fast, but he'd run, right? So I'm a second-year player, so I was like, are you kidding me? I can isolate it. So I'd go in once a week at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I just get on the treadmill next to him and ask him questions, just pepper him with questions, and he just loved talking. So it's Bill Parcells, right? You're talking football, he loves it. I'm just learning from Bill Parcells. Are you kidding me? One-on-one, it's amazing. So one of the things that I talked to him about were quarterbacks, and he said, he goes, 85% of games are lost. There's an interception, there's a mental error, there's a penalty, and you lose the game. Like, you go back and watch games, 85% of them are lost. Very few times is somebody making a great play or a great decision and actually winning the game, turning the tide. He had a good sense of the analytics way back in 93. He was already talking about percentages. If we have -1 turnover, -2 turnover, like chances to win the game. He was already doing this stuff way back then. And the single biggest impact on win-loss percentage is turnovers. If your quarterback throws a turnover -1, I don't care if he goes 30 for 36 for 360 yards and 3 scores. If he throws 2 picks, you're going to get beat.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like his quarterback rating is going to be 109. He's going to look great because he threw for almost 400 yards. He completed almost 75% of his passes, but he throws 2 picks. You're going to lose. You're going to win like 24% of those games. I mean, okay. And he played his tail off. So all this to back up to say is the quarterback that does a good job of protecting the football will give you a chance to win. Not like 50-50 chance, but will give you a 75% chance to beat other teams that just turn it over. Like if you just, a punt's not so bad. But so to hear that Caleb is getting better at protecting the football inspires me, because that's actually more important than his completion percentage or touchdowns. Like the fact he's getting better at managing where that ball goes and making sure the enemy doesn't get their hands on it is the game changer.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, the more you protect the football and keep the possession on your side up on that, that's going to be a big difference maker. And yeah, like I said, I hope that, Caleb Williams, he really does succeed in this league. And, I'm just excited overall for the overhaul of quarterbacks, because we're so used to you had to have a star quarterback, whether it was Favre or it was Manning or it was either one. And now we got a huge overhaul of them, and it's crazy to see the talent really come up. My personal pick, honestly, that I feel like could be a difference maker that a lot of people have so much skepticism on is Bo Nix, because I felt like I look at his development that Dan Lanning did in Oregon, and the kid is just phenomenal. I think if you put him in the middle of a Raiders, a Vikings, or even if you put him in a Seattle offense, that kid is going to give you everything you want, and even for Denver. So hopefully, these quarterbacks, they really do work. But a fun question for you, because of course, knowing based upon your name, have you had that experience where people kind of mistaken you from the other Rod Smith from Denver? Like, has that ever happened to you in your career?
It happens. It happens daily. I mean, literally, if I'm on TikTok or something, on Facebook or something, or Instagram, some people are like, "Hey, I'm the biggest Denver fan ever," and I'm like, "No, I'm the different Ross Smith." I literally get that every single day. I am not kidding, and I know Rod and played against him, and he's a stud, man. Really good football player. Long arms, super wide catch radius, highly intelligent, well prepared, much physically tougher than he looks in the way he approaches. A guy doesn't have any real swagger type thing, doesn't walk with his chest out, but you get him on run plays and try to knock him down, you're gonna be in for a surprise. I mean, he's a really tough, physical, consistent blocker. I mean, I didn't see that on film, but when I got out there and tried to get after him a little bit, it didn't get anywhere. He's a really tough guy, and wildly intelligent and a good football player. And to answer your question, I do get something Rod Smith. If they can't see my face, they're like, "Hey, Rod Smith, I'm the biggest Denver fan ever." I get it all the time.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I mean, hey, like I said, I made sure because I do my research all the time, because I try to avoid that. But for me, me personally, I've been doing this show for going on 4 years running, and just to really, experience it, because you are now part of the list that I have experienced from a lot of former players. I mean, I just recently talked to James Canada, really, really nice guy, great guy, told me a lot about his experience in Tampa. Then Marlon Greenwood, I met up with Sean Merriman. So it's just the experience of it is just what makes the show so valuable, and just, the content itself, because it ain't like we're just going to be chopping up football all day. It's just what the journey road, the life of where we were at, what it took for us to get there, and now what we're doing afterward in our career. So good, dude. You look great, man. And seeing your content as well, just producing and taking it by storm, is just something special. But I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for taking the time, man. Really appreciate it, and really loved seeing your insights on everything, man. And hopefully, like I said, Carolina rejuvenates, and we'll see better days, and hopefully we'll get the best out of Bryce Young that we saw up in Alabama. But appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful. I love your content, and your commentary was spot on. I agree with it. And let's do it again soon.
Absolutely, man. You bet. Boy, that is something special. I love that for former players. I really, really do, because it's people don't realize, behind closed doors, I mean, you get a chance to talk with them. You get a chance to really kind of do the rundown, and at the same time, that's just me personally as a Charger fan, I don't even have to show my fandom, but it's just you look at all these former stars and current stars. I mean, these are guys that are so important, to this game and what the game has shaped to be. So to be a part of that, it's something really amazing. But so shifting on over, because like I said, we talked about Caleb Williams early on, and we talked about this whole thing with the Chicago Bears, but he don't just cover Chicago Bears. He covers Chicago everything from the Bulls to the Cubs. There's a lot of stuff that we got to break it down. So joining me now, my man and longtime friend, Mikey Hughes. All right, man. Look, we need some answers because a lot of the time, I mean, the Bears, they don't realize how hefty of a pick they've got until here we are now going in by the time that we get to late April and into May. This is going to be the real deal, man. And like I said, I'm hearing everything. I mean, the fact that a former NFL scout is already turning around and thinking Caleb Williams is going to be a bust. I mean, come on. Have we not dealt with this before? Eli Manning was skeptical of going to the Chargers before he got traded to the Giants. So looking at this, I mean, what are you hearing? Like, what's been going on in Chicago that's been buzzing that, you've been given a lot of in-depth thought for a lot of optimistic Chicago Bears fans?
Yeah, I think, that's the complete opposite answer you're looking for. I know we all want the clickbait. We all want me to sit up here and say Chicago is rocking with Caleb, Chicago is rocking with Justin. But it's the farthest thing from the truth. It's really tight knit. I think people who know. There's a very small circle in Ryan Poles' circle that I don't even know if I would call it that, because I believe it's really just him and his hand who know who he's picking number one, or if he's picking at number one. And I think there's a lot of different ways it can go. And what I hate about this time of the year, especially, which I love your show because we're never having those conversations, but you're having the conversations you need to have. We're talking about the evaluations of Caleb from 3-4 months ago. And I start to hear all these rumblings and, oh, well, I think we should take him. He actually looks pretty good. But like 3-4 months ago when Caleb was actually playing, it was the complete opposite. And Soldier Field was chanting, "We want Fields." But we're in this era now to where media is, we need something to talk about. There's no Bears football. Justin Fields is on vacation wherever he is right now, back in Georgia. And then obviously Caleb Williams isn't playing. So people just continue to beef up that conversation. I couldn't tell you today what's going to happen. Just know that I've mentally prepared myself for either direction.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I don't think I'd hate to put the narrative of basically saying that, in the 21 draft, that Justin Fields, and like we've always said, where you land matters. And the hardest part with Chicago, and you've known this covering this team, they're big on defense. They love their monsters of the midway mentality. But to me, it's just like the league is evolving. You've got to pivot to offense. You've got to give them something. So I respect the aggression that they gave last year when they were like, we'll get Chase Claypool. We got DJ Moore. We got I can appreciate the aggressiveness, but it has not yet translated to where this team's going to finally score more than 25 points a game. So if looking at this and going from two outcomes to kind of weigh your thought in, the first outcome, you pass on Caleb Williams and you maybe go and get Marvin Harrison. So this is kind of the deed now you really got to give for Justin Fields if you really want this to work, because the offensive line is getting better. I think defensively, there's not a problem as long as they may re-sign Jalen Johnson, which that might be a little bit of a hurdle. But I think if you do that, now you're giving Justin something of, I've got my weapons. Now watch me cook, right?
Yeah, most definitely. And the other day they released, unfortunately, Cody Whitehair and Eddie Jackson, two former Pro Bowlers. They were huge in 2018. They've been here over 7 years each. And, it's unfortunate to see guys like that go, but that's exactly what you want out of the organization. As a fan, I'm like, oh, Eddie. But I also understand Eddie hasn't been able to tackle a chair since he got paid in 2019. So, there's levels to it. I want to give love to Eddie Jackson in 2017 to 2019. I was like, he's the next Ed Reed. He's the guy. This is happening. And then whether it's injuries or just lack of effort, whatever you want to compile it to, I'm not going to speculate. But freeing up that $30 million, the Bears are now at $70 million. And I'm like, all right, well, we had a lot of money last year. We didn't use all of it. And I understand why we didn't use all of it. There's Justin, there's Jalen. Get Jalen a contract. I don't care if it's Caleb or Justin right now. I need Jalen here because Tyreek Stevenson was, to me, an all-pro rookie. He was an absolute phenom as a corner, but to lose Jalen potentially due to holding out or just not wanting to participate in camps is going to be huge. This is a very young secondary, especially after you lose Eddie. So the point of bringing all that in is like, I'm totally with you. You're bringing in veterans. The Montez Sweats are locked up. You got to re-sign Jalen. You have Tremaine Edmonds. Everything defensively, especially with Matt Eberflus, to give him his flowers, because I've been very critical on him. I was doing Fire Flus Fridays for a while, but we are starting to learn that, okay, maybe we can work with something. The only problem for me, Jake, is at the end of the day, whether it's Justin or whether it's Caleb, there's always going to be this revolving door of an offensive coordinator as long as the Hallis family, the McCaskey family are going to continue to go this 1920s Bears style, run the football led by a defensive coordinator. It's a problem. We look at Jay Cutler, who, Jay, not making any comparisons to him and Patrick Mahomes, but you look at the arm talent and what they were able to do, they're not too far off. And it's like, why did Jay not have as much success when he had Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey, Matt Forte,
Johnny Knox?
Devin Hester, the list goes on. And you'd have Peanut and Urlacher and Briggs and all those guys alongside of even Pepper. Shout out Pep and Hess. But with that, you're like, okay, well, you had 6 offensive coordinators in 8 years, and Justin's going to be on his 3rd, really his 4th if you count Bill Lazor. And it's like, okay, so you bring in Caleb. Let's have a whole conversation about it. Bring in Caleb and you fire Matt Eberflus the year after, presumably, because they did that with John Fox and Mitch Trubisky. They did that with Nagy and Fields. And, if history continues to repeat itself, that's probably what's going to happen with Flus. So then Caleb would be on his 2nd offensive coordinator and his 2nd head coach in year 2. And that's the part that you need to figure out as an organization is I don't care who QB1 is because he's always going to get ran out of town based off of all these different things that are going on in the entire industry right now. And it's not good whatsoever. So I think what I'm looking for is continuity as far as an offensive coordinator goes with Shane Waldron and how far and how long that lasts. Because Jake, like I told you in a text, if he has success with either quarterback, Shane Waldron will end up being a head coach somewhere. And then that's another offensive coordinator you have to hire. So I just need, not saying fire Flus, I'm just saying I need solidified, I'm going to be here for the next 5 to 10 years for this next quarterback.
Yeah, 100%. And even speaking about Shane Waldron, when I saw the hire, I was just like, you know what? Seeing his success that he had in Seattle when he had both Russ and he had Geno Smith. Now, I'll argue this, that I think Geno Smith being a late bloomer, to me, is just one of those things that, if you had Geno in a better situation than in the Jets and, in the Giants, he probably would explode. But I think watching Shane Waldron and kind of seeing his offensive philosophy, I mean, what are you most excited about with Waldron? Because I think you're going to get majority of this. You're going to get smart passing. I do also think you're going to get a little more of a spread type offense because you got a guy who's a blocker and a catcher in Cole Kmet, and then you're going to have at least a couple different sprinkle some receivers up and in there. So how do you kind of evaluate Shane Waldron's offense?
So what I love about Shane, and I always ignore the Washington era because there was nothing really to talk about there. But, working with Bill Belichick, working with Sean McVay, Pete Carroll, he's had so many great minds, but that only goes so far. And what he had full control over was that Seattle Seahawks offense. I'm not really going to sit up here and say what he did with the Rams going to the Super Bowl. What was that like? I mean, come on. You know what I mean? Like, you were under Sean McVay. He's an offensive guru. We know how it goes. It's kind of the same conversations about Matt Nagy when he got hired by the Bears. Oh, well, he was with Andy Reid. Okay, but now we know, you know what I mean? He was just kind of standing there holding the clipboard. But, with that being said, what I love about Shane is the dual threat quarterbacks that he's had, the different kinds of quarterbacks that he's been able to have success with. You're looking at the guys like Jared Goff to Russell Wilson, who's a more mobile quarterback. And then you have obviously Geno Smith, who might be a statue, but, he's been able to resurrect his career in that front. So I love that more than a Cliff Kingsbury hire. Because if they would have hired Cliff, the writings on the walls, we're probably getting Caleb. And that's really what it is. is because of the USC connection. So the fact that we have a guy like Shane, whether it's Justin or whether it's Caleb, or I'm not throwing this out there, even if they went left and they said we're getting Russell Wilson, okay, I understand that whether it's a mobile quarterback or a pocket quarterback, we're going to be able to have success with Shane because he has different methods of how he's going to dictate different quarterbacks. And I think that's really what went into the hire. If you interviewed if you interviewed Cliff, I'm sure all he talked about was Caleb because he's trying to get on that front of understanding, I worked with him all year and, he had a down year. So I don't know why that's even a conversation compared to his Heisman year. But I think there's a lot of different levels to it. I was just really ecstatic that it wasn't respectfully a Cliff Kingsbury hire.
Yeah, I mean, you got to look at it from this point. I mean, especially going to Cliff Kingsbury, I mean, the fact of, look, you talk so highly about Caleb Williams, but here's the thing. You had Patrick Mahomes in Texas Tech, and you still couldn't end up, translating it wins in the Big 12. It's right. Just like, come on now. But I think ultimately, but there are some points where it's like you're meant to be a head coach or you're just meant to be a coordinator. And you can be okay with both, And so, looking at the Bears as well with their situation, because there's a lot that goes on. But when Montez Sweat got acquired from the Bears, I loved it. I was like, 2 games and he's already got 6 sacks. Defense is not a problem to me. I think Matt Eberflus has worked his side of the ball. So, how optimistic do you got to be with this, this Chicago defense? Because, of course, you got to work the offense. And then eventually, I think the philosophy is now you're seeing with teams, they'd rather would work hefty on offense and get younger with defense and start to build them up from scratch to where these guys, I want a defense that's going to be there for 5-6 years, like you said. So having Montez Sweat there, I mean, that's really been the big factor for them to really kind of give hope and optimism for that defense, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was huge on Montez, and I was one of those guys that I love the idea of 2 OSU former co-captains, Justin Fields and Chase Young. That's awesome. It's a great thought. But I really didn't see Chase Young do anything until the sack in the beginning of the Super Bowl. So, that was really where I was at with that. 2nd-round pick for Montez Sweat. The best ability is availability. And we've always preached that. We've always talked about that. Montez is always there. Knock on wood now that I said that. But, especially in Chicago watching these. But, I think one of the biggest things with Montez was really just making a complete defense. You already had your secondary that you believed in. You brought in these linebackers that are just – they're absolute magnets to a football. I mean, they're addicted. It's like flies the crap for another word, but they really are. I mean, Tremaine Edmonds is a freak of nature. The man just spawns in wherever you have the ball. And then obviously guys like TJ Edwards, we saw what he was able to do with the Eagles. And I think when you look at guys like that, it's hard for them to do their job when there is no real pass rush. So you bring in a Yannick Ngakoue, and it was all right. You know what I mean? He's coming off a great year, but he just didn't really translate early on. And I think Poles understood, a guy like Montez and Chase are going to be available, and they just capitalized on it. And I absolutely love the fact that it was a re-signing before the season even ended, like a couple weeks into, okay, we got him, he's locked in, 4 or 5 year deal, let's rock out. And that really was it for me. You're tied leading the league in interceptions. You love that. And obviously, I believe it's a top type. They finished 2nd, if I'm not mistaken. I would have loved to finish 1st, but we finished 2nd in run stop defense. So they're pretty complete, man. There's guys like Andrew Billings who have kind of come out the woodwork. Javon Dexter Sr. kind of made some noise towards the end of the year. There's still some guys, like I'm still preaching. I still think the best guy on this defense is going to be a Tyreek Stevenson, without a doubt. I think Tyreek Stevenson's one of those guys. He's one of one. He's a Florida boy. He's doing his thing. So I love what he's been able to do, especially under Flus. We had to fire our DC halfway through the year for HR reasons, and so did the running backs coach. It was a long year. It was a very long year. A lot of bad things going on. But I think one thing I left this season with was the monsters of the Midway are back. I just think, what are we going to do to change the outcome this time? Because since I was 24 years of life, I've seen the Urlachers, I've seen the Macs, I've seen all these guys come in and out, but it doesn't translate to Super Bowl wins.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the kind of thing is because don't get me wrong, defenses are important when you need situational stops. But at the same time, if your quarterback's not producing the throw and your offensive weapons, they're not, getting the catches and executing the plays for it to be a well-ran play, then that's where it becomes the difference maker, especially in the big stage in the Super Bowl. My last question before shifting to a different subject upon this, so the NFC North, as you already know, evaluating this division, I mean, Detroit, this was the most magical year that they have had in Detroit sports history. I felt so happy for them.
Yeah.
But they've got attitude. They'll know they'll bite kneecaps. But at the same time, Ben Johnson, he's back now. I think there's some unfinished business. To me personally, I wished he would have just said the narrative. I'm not taking the Washington job because there's unfinished business here. Instead, he had to go on a ramble on of like, well, those are two basketball guys. What do they know about football? I'm like, come on, don't do that. My thing is you come back to Detroit because you're a great first half team, but now let's work on the second half because that was their problem this past year. Now you got promise with Jordan Love now in Green Bay, which is just, I know that angers a lot of Chicago fans everywhere, but there's promise that because ultimately they just show that, look, Aaron, you were the problem. We're still a stable organization. We got Jordan Love. We've got a young roster we can build around for 6 years. And then, you got Minnesota, which honestly, I kept saying Bo Nix or, J.J. McCarthy would be really good quarterbacks to start because I think they're done with Kirk Cousins. So how do you evaluate the NFC North and knowing the competition and the expectation the Bears have to get it right in this division, right?
Yeah, well, so I'm kind of there's two parts to this that I think is why I have this conversation with myself so much, and it's why I have my personal bias on Justin Fields. I've been watching Fields since I was 14, 15 years old. We were in the same graduating class. So I was always checking him out on Max Prep Sports, obviously, the Netflix series, Georgia, obviously what he was able to do at Ohio. He's a baller. He's one of those guys. He's a game changer. He is the X factor. And why I'm even bringing that up to the whole conversation of the NFC North is there's X factors in the NFC North now. And I think it's going to be one of the tougher, younger divisions in all of football for years to come, outside of obviously the Mahomes, Justin Herberts of the world, and whatever the hell is going on in Vegas and Denver. But, you never know. But Devontae Adams is there, so it's still a reasonable conversation. But I think when I look at a guy like Justin, you have to be able to hit this mark. You have to be able to do something here because I'm gonna take you on a walk that I've been taking myself on every single night. Is if you're Ryan Poles, you have back-to-back first-round picks, and that has happened how many times in the NFL's history? Yep. I couldn't count any of them. So if you look at what could potentially happen, there's a lot of outcomes. Let's say Detroit continues to have success. Ben Johnson coming back is a nightmare to me because I was like, as soon as Johnson's gone, in my personal opinion, I think that shows a lot of exposure on a guy like Dan Campbell. Campbell is a great culture guy. Campbell's great with defense. But if you don't have Ben Johnson, I think you're going to see exactly what happened to Sirianni in Philly. So that's really just how I personally feel. And that's not a shot at Dan. It's just he understands what he's good at. He understands what he needs to do. Same thing happened with Mike Ditka when Buddy Ryan left. You know what I mean? He's not a defensive-minded guy, so it just happens that way. That's the name of the game. And if people got problems with Sirianni, we could talk. I have problems too. But in all seriousness, man, you have that conversation about, okay, I take Caleb. Jake, I'm going to put a scenario in your head that Caleb Williams is less than elite. And you look at Marvin Harrison Jr., who could be a top 3 wide receiver of all time. I've already seen C.J. Stroud have success. Let's say, like you were having a conversation with a legend a few minutes ago, maybe Bryce Young figures it out at some point and gets some help. Let's say, for sake of argument, Justin Fields goes to Atlanta or he goes to Pittsburgh and he wins a playoff game. And Caleb Williams is anything less than elite. That is single-handedly the worst, I would say the second worst decision the Chicago Bears have ever made, the first being not taking Patrick Mahomes, and that's all in a span of 10 years. So I'm sitting here right now today telling you, if you're going to look at the NFC North and you're going to see the Jordan Loves, you're going to see, I'm not going to say the Jared Goffs because I'm a Hendon Hooker fan, but I think, you look at what Jahmyr Gibbs and even David Montgomery have been able to do.
Oh, yeah.
And on top of that, you throw in Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson. Anybody who thinks they're not a quarterback away is crazy. I look at that and I say, if you're going to tell me that we're going to rock out with Caleb at 1, I think it's the wrong move. If that's what we do, it's what we do. But I'm a believer as a former athlete. I've played on so many different levels. And it's like, at the end of the day, I will run through a wall for certain people. And Justin's been here from the very bottom, and he's every single year gotten better. I'm looking at a guy who's broken NFL single game records. I'm looking at a guy who's right up there with Lamar and Mike Vick as it comes to mobility and athleticism. If you see a guy like that who's willing to fight for others, not blame other people, Luke Getsy ran the ball 6 times in week 17 or week 18 against the Green Bay Packers, Jake. And I saw a Justin Fields that went up to the podium and said he needed to be better. You ran the ball 6 times with your running back, not Justin Fields. There was one play call for a QB run. That's on your offensive play caller. So it's like, at the end of the day, if you give me Marvin, an X factor, if you give me Justin, who's an X factor, and DJ Moore, who I believe is like right, if we were playing Madden, this is like superstar level. I think you're looking at guys like that. We have no problem with Shane Waldron, and I think that's exactly where you need to go. If they go Caleb, I think you and I have to have a completely different conversation. What happens at 9? Do they get Rome Odunze? Do they get someone else? Neighbors? I don't know. But I'm with JF1 all day, and I think that's the only way we compete in the North.
I mean, man, you could only imagine. Like, I mean, I've had personal conversations with myself about this too, because I'm like, if Chicago really was to move on from Justin Fields, I mean, I've said it to people. I said, you know what? I wouldn't count out Seattle going and getting him. And the reason of that is because you've got an offense, and you've got a defensive mindset in Mike McDonald, who he's going to work that defense. So it's like you've got trust in Justin Fields. So you know he's going to distribute the ball. That would be the only destination, in my opinion, that I feel like could work. Pittsburgh.
I like that.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, there's no high-end expectation when you're playing in Seattle, because you're playing San Fran, you're playing LA, but at the same time, they are known to be a disruptor in the NFC in every single way. And we've seen it time in and time again. I mean, Pete Carroll proved to us when they moved on from Russ, I didn't need Russ. I just needed the defense, and he hit on all their draft picks. So
they're nasty. And what a group of celebrities too. They have Michael Jackson, Kobe Bryant. They have a bunch of guys in that secondary that are crazy. If you just look at their names, I saw it I was playing Madden the other day, and I was just like, they got a group of celebs in here, man. It's pretty cool. But I love that. I haven't even, like, I've thought about Seattle, but I don't know what they're willing to give up for a guy like Justin Fields. I think the combination with a former teammate in JSN would be absolutely crazy. Having a guy like DK, I mean, it would be really dope to see Justin have success in Seattle.
100%. Well, and the big thing is, because even when you look at, the division, because it's going to get younger, it's going to get tougher. I'm excited for what next year's going to give us from it. But my hope is Chicago does the right thing. And the other thing is, you not only can hear this from, like, you're not just prospecting it from analysts, but you're hearing it from players. DJ Moore loves playing with Justin Fields. There's guys that are just like, no, JF is my guy. So it's, you kind of see that and hear that. So hopefully they do the right thing. And again, it's all on Ryan Poles from here on out. And so if he makes the right moves, it should be good for Chicago's future.
I mean, to that final point, I mean, I didn't even need to hear it from the players. I was at the game. I was at the game on Christmas. I was at the game on New Year's, and we're screaming, "We want Fields." The entire stadium erupts. It's going viral all over ESPN. I think sometimes your job is a lot easier to do when the city has someone's back. And I think sometimes they get very split around January, February, because that's when all the combine starts, and they respectfully, and I think I'm allowed to say this, they always pick one random white kid and just build his draft stock up. This year it's Drake May, and the other year was Zach Wilson, and we got the guys like Daniel Jones, and I'm just like, Mitch Trubisky, and I'm just like, man, why are we blowing this kid up like he's the hottest thing since pants with pockets? Like, I don't get it. But we've heard the "we want Fields" chants, and I think that makes your job a hell of a lot easier when the city is okay with Justin Fields.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I can agree with you. I mean, I'm like, Chicago learned a lesson taking a North Carolina quarterback. You really think they're going to try to do that again?
That's also wore number 10. Like, no, I'm not doing it. Sam Howell, Mitch Trubisky, I'm good. I'm not doing that. People are like, oh, but you can't say that because Tom Brady came from Michigan. I don't care. This isn't Tom Brady. I know this isn't Tom Brady. He didn't even win his own division. So we're not having this conversation.
The only thing that makes me skeptical about Drake May, and I actually saw film footage of this, and thanks to my good friend Dante, who showed me the footage, but there was a play that Drake May had. And the thing that scared me is that if you're Drake May and you're a quarterback, you're going to be a franchise quarterback for somebody, you better hope they got a left tackle. Because I watched that film when he was holding on to the ball and he got sacked on his blind side. Mm-hmm. That was too long of the ball to be held from there. You got to be quicker. You got to make a quick decision. Yeah. That's the part that's going to scare me about Drake May. If you don't have a left tackle, that's gonna spill out a can of beans you don't want.
I'm gonna give you and Coach Dante some homework though, because this one's a lot of fun for me. Is when I watch college film. It was what kind of took me away from a Spencer Rattler really early on a couple of years back. Is if you watch Drake May, you don't even have to look up film. Just look up his touchdown highlights from this year. How many of them are wide receivers that aren't being covered by a DB? How many of them are just him kind of rolling out and then there's a wide open wide receiver and he just hits him in the red zone? And it's like, that's not happening in the NFL. There's nobody going to be not covered 90% of the time. And, and when I look at a lot of his passes, they're over the top. You're going to have to stretch out for it. I don't see him hit a lot of guys in the chest. I'm not asking you to be perfect, but I'm just asking you to be competent in a conference that's absolute crap, respectfully. I was a Tar Heels fan for a very long time. But it's like, even with Caleb, man, like we talk about what guys are good at. Bryce Young, why did he go number one? Why did we have that conversation earlier, Jake? Is because you understand what he was able to do at the collegiate level. He was able to be in the playoffs every year with Nick Saban. He was able to have success. Same with Justin Fields. If you're going to tell me that a kid in the Pac-12 wasn't even able to win a Pac-12 championship in Caleb Williams with Cliff Kingsbury, and now the Washington Commanders just paired the two together and said if they couldn't do it in college, maybe they could do it in the NFL. It's just, the math's not mathing on that. And it's like, if you can't have that much success, sure, there's the Patrick Mahomeses of the world, but to your point, it's Texas Tech. So it's like, I'm not expecting anything from the majority of that roster on Texas Tech, but if you're on a Caleb Williams-led team coming off a Heisman year and you still can't have success and you're getting swamped by Notre Dame, I mean, you have to look at it and say, how are you any different than Justin Fields was coming out of college? Justin had more playoff success. He was bigger in the bright lights. The man broke 5 ribs and then threw 4 touchdowns, and you're out here crying with your mom talking about, I want to go home and pet my dog. I'm not here for that, bro. Like, I'm sorry. No disrespect, but it's like, this kid's a warrior. I will go to war today with Justin Fields, and I wouldn't even walk down the streets of Chicago with Caleb Williams and his painted fingernails. I'm not with it.
And that's the same thing that I feel about Bo Nix, because I'm just like, I watch him in Oregon and I'm like, because here's the thing. We all felt this way when Justin Herbert came out of Oregon, because we didn't see the best of him until we saw the Senior Bowl and the Rose Bowl. And Dan Lanning was like, go on and do your thing, And so by that time, he shaped and developed Justin Herbert. Now he's literally taken on like, oh, he can go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Now you got Bo Nix in this situation. And I think Denver's a perfect spot for him, because it's just like, he doesn't complain. He's at the same time, he could match with Sean Payton's aggressive coaching. And he could be the kind that he's already got weapons, from Cortland Sutton to Jerry Jeudy, and who knows how Tim Patrick will be, but you've got Marvin Mims. So that could work. So I'm like, where you land really does matter, as long as you've got the coach, you've got the right culture, and you've got the offensive weaponry that you need to succeed. So shifting on over. So I caught a little bit of the NBA All-Star game before I was just like, you know what, I'm just going to drink my beer. I'm not going to bother with this. So my thought on the bottom half of the hour was, I think they just need to get rid of these games. Don't get rid of the competitions, but just get rid of these games. Because if I'm not, Stephen A. Smith went off on this, because I'm like, first of all, if you're not going to put forth the effort, but I think the problem is there's nothing to play for in these all-star games. Like in baseball, you played for home field advantage. So in the NBA, if you're not really playing for everything and you're just scoring up, 200, 300, 400, in my opinion, and you're not playing defense, I mean, why even have this game in the first place? But the other thing that I thought was crazy was he said LeBron James is to blame because of the reason that the dunk contest has gone the way that it has. Yeah. Because you and I have watched when Michael Jordan and Dominique Wilkins and Kobe, they all have participated in these big things. I mean, I'm watching Steph Curry every year, participate in the 3-point line. So I'm like, I shouldn't have to get an excuse from this. I mean, what was your outlook in the All-Star game? Because I'm the kind, I watch hockey, I watch, Major League Baseball, and I watch the NFL. NFL, I wouldn't play this flag football thing. I did just play the competitions, because that's what we loved when it was in Hawaii. And then the competitions as well. I went to an All-Star game for Vegas in the hockey, in NHL, and I thought it was spectacular. Vegas, the production, everything they had together was so entertaining. But it's like, I like that. I don't like the 3-on-3 All-Star game. I don't know what that's about every time. But I'm like, if you're not going to play a normal 5-on-5, why even play at all? So you look at the All-Star games now for a lot of these major sports, and I think the only one that really surpasses all of them is Major League Baseball. Players are mic'd up. The players are basically playing for something, and there's home field advantage. Now, I don't think they have it anymore, but like your outlook on what the NBA All-Star weekend really was, like I just thought this was just such a snooze fest.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you hit it on the head, and that's really the point that I think a lot of people are kind of coming to the consensus of is you have to make it worth something, especially to guys like Luka, guys like Jokic who are already getting paid on max deals, super max deals. An extra 500K really doesn't do anything for you, unless you're about your business, and that's fine. But I think at the end of the day, you have to make it about something more. You have to make it about home field advantage. You have to make it about home court advantage in the finals. Even if you're a LaMelo Ball on the Charlotte Hornets and you're not making it anywhere close to the second round, maybe even anything past the play-in if you're my Chicago Bulls. But, you have that conversation about, we're doing this just in case. What if we do end up going on a Cinderella story? What if you are the Miami Heat? What if you do need that every ounce of an overstep over the other conference than they have on you? So it's like I think it's really important. I mean, man, I put $100 that Luka would have 10 points, and man, I made a whole montage reel. I can't even begin to tell you about the things I watched from Luka last night. I saw 34 seconds left on the clock. He takes a full court shot and bricks it from the top of the key, and I'm just looking at him and I'm like, it's a full court shot. This was a 34 seconds full court shot, and I'm just like, why? I'm watching him just give over, turnover, brick, and he's just walking. He's half the time. I mean, the offensive play isn't even over. The man's back on defense, and I'm like, what are we doing over here? And this is Luka Doncic. He's one of my favorite players, and it's like last year he had 4 points in the All-Star game, and I remember being a shorty. I remember when Kobe and Shaq had beef, and the All-Star game had meaning. And I definitely miss the Jordan era, but it's definitely something for me where it's like, these were the guys. This was the show that we came all out to see. And 200 points was cool. Don't get it twisted. I was like, wow, I never thought I'd see that in my life. But, it's also the conversation of, what did I just see, though? It wasn't the best 200 points I've ever seen because no one's playing defense. Everyone's just messing around. It looked just like a dunk contest because that's all everybody was doing. And I think that's the big thing about the dunk contest is I'm not going to solely blame it on Bron. I think a lot of people do, and I'm not a Bron supporter. I respect Bron and everything he did, but I would never say I was a LeBron James fan or fanatic. But especially being in Chicago, it just wasn't taught. But I think something that a lot of people don't put into perspective is Jaylen Brown was the first NBA All-Star to be in the dunk contest since 2017. Like, that's a problem. We had the Levines, we had the Jordans. They're not Michael Jordan or LeBron James, but those were big dunking names. You know what I mean? So I think, Jake, to your point, to like finish that off, I think that's a bigger case for me. Obviously, these guys are banged up right now, but they've never done it. So it's like the Ja Morants, the Zion Williamsons, those guys who made a name out of dunking. These aren't in-game dunkers. These are freaks of nature. I mean, the stuff I've seen Ja do in a dunking perspective is absolutely insane. And the stuff I've seen Zion do, again, I have to say in a dunking perspective is absolutely insane because outside they're also insane. But it's unfortunate, bro.
Yeah, it really, really is. And like the thing, and it's a great point you put out because even when I watched Zion and Duke, I mean, the guy was just dunking like crazy left and right. And so it's just like
broke his shoe.
Yeah, that's what we pay to see. It's just like I feel for every major sporting event. I am for the hardworking American fans. I really, really am because we're the kinds that pour our blood, sweat, and tears every single day, and especially paying in our taxes before April. Like we deserve to have this moment where we could be with our stars. We could see these guys. I mean, you've been there with the conversation when they were like, look, enough of this load management thing. I get it. If you want to take days off, get them where they don't mean anything. Right. Because when you're in if you're in a division rival game where you gotta clinch a division, or you're in a you're in an interleague, play or whatever, and you're trying to basically showcase for ratings, that's totally fine.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like if I got 2 or 3 of my stars out, what am I paying the tickets then for?
Where are you at? Like, because here's my problem. I've had so many conversations about it, and there's I'm so mixed, and I'd love your opinion on it because it's like I talked to my brother about it, and I was like, man, like it would be 10 times easier for me to evaluate a true all-star. I would throw it into baseball. Marcus Stroman, Cy Young candidate first half of last year, second half barely even plays. So like, are you really an all-star of 2023 if you were only good for the first half? But the criteria is supposed to be the first half. And a lot of people say, well, what if they played at the end of the year? And the other side of that is, just like the Pro Bowl, no one's playing at the end of the year because no one's tearing their ACL in a Pro Bowl game. You know what I mean? So what do you think is the best time frame to really consider someone an all-star? Because I've seen guys who first half of the year, oh my God, absolutely phenomenal. I mean, look at Cody Bellinger, comeback player of the year last year, batting over 300, 26 home runs, not an all-star because the first half he was a little banged up.
So my thing is, I think my criteria, and this I've always stuck to numbers on this one because I know a lot of people have been back and forth with, well, what was his availability and all that. I get it if you're trying to meet a criteria of the amount of games, but I'm looking at, look at the stats, but then look at his production and look at who he's facing against. Like you can't tell me that that's not all-star worthy. I mean, good God. I say this, I put Major League Baseball on blast of what is my criteria to make the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Last year,
that's
Scott Rowland is in it. I'm like, what? How?
We can go on for hours, bro.
Oh my God. I couldn't understand. I'm like, look, outside of Peter Gammons and Ken Rosenthal, everybody should just be fired.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, if you're basing upon like recency bias, I think part of that reason was they tried to do this with Craig Biggio. Biggio was not a part of the PED era. Like, he was not of it. He played in the middle of it. But that guy from Stony Brook, Long Island, that dude was a natural. And then the same when you look at Jeff Bagwell. It's like, come on, guys. What are we doing? We're not looking at, well, he took juice. He shouldn't be in. I'm like, but look at what they've done. Baseball has been a snooze fest up until we watched the long balls of 98. It's just like, come on now. Like that. My point is, I think if you look at numbers statistically, and I think part of that reason, if you do meet the criteria, great. But I think at the same time, you got to account for the statistics. You got to account for their performances and who they're playing against. Yeah. Because then that's where I know that's my all-star. That's a guy I know that is worthy of being, an all-star, in my opinion.
For sure, for sure. I also love, like, when we talked about the Hall of Fame, like, Mongo just got into the Hall, and Bears fans are ecstatic about it because everything he's got going on in his life right now. But Mongo's been done since the 90s, and he just got in. And then in baseball, it's like you have 3-4 years, and then we'll just forget you ever existed. And that to me is like what are we talking about? How is there
Billy Wagner not in the Hall of Fame?
How is there a time limit on my credibility for my 20-year career? And you're going to give me 3 years to make the Hall when there's people like Derek Jeter and Alex Rodriguez and Big Papi in there? Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, it's absolutely nuts. And talking about baseball, I've seen your content and loved getting your input up on this, but everybody right now is so outraged by just the new jerseys that Nike's come out with. Like, they're so outraged by this. I'm like, so my thought of this is, yes, I understand player comfortability and performance. I get that. But at the same time, why should you even change the quality of like just the look of the jersey? Like, could you imagine this now? Because we have City Connects. Could you imagine if the City Connects come out and it literally looks like that? It looks like a freaking like fan bought Fanatics jersey. That's insanity to me. Like, I've been watching your content up on it, and I love your opinion on it because my thing is, I'm all about comfortability, but that looks like damn crap.
It does. It does. I mean, listen, and I didn't get a chance to make some content on it, but my boy Kev and I at 670 The Score, we were rocking out. We were just at a Dick's Sporting Goods over in Skokie. We were getting some beat ups, and we stumbled upon the trash jerseys at the store, and we were like, oh dang, let's try it on. Let's see what's up. And we both tried them on. We both felt them, and man, they felt great. It felt like a dry fit jersey, and I loved it. And I definitely understood like why you would change the template, why you would change the wording on the back of the jersey, because it is originally very thick. But when you're on such a thick jersey, it makes sense. So it would look a little and feel a little odd, kind of like when you get those first jobs out of high school, you're working at a grocery store or something, you have this little dry fit shirt with this fat logo on the side. It's like a patch. It doesn't feel comfortable, but you also have to understand, like, for me, just like an NBA jersey, this is worldwide. Like, baseball jerseys are in rap videos. Baseball jerseys are in culture. Baseball jerseys are a part of everyday's lifestyle. I'm a jersey collector myself. And I think, like, one of the biggest things for me is, like, you got to understand what you're marketing right now. If you have this as an Oakland A's jersey, okay, that makes sense. If you have this as a Guardians jersey or a Tigers jersey, I guess that makes sense. Shohei Ohtani is going to be wearing this jersey. Aaron Judge, Ronald Acuna Jr., these types of cats are wearing these jerseys. And I think it's really unfortunate to me that some people are going to be going to a DH gate, or where we normally go, because of overpricing. If you're a kid just trying to, get a jersey of your favorite player, that's where I always went. It comes to China after like 4 weeks, you get it. It's not good, but it's not bad. And now I think more people are going to start going to that just to find the original jerseys or look for the original style. I see this kind of being like a 1-year trial thing, kind of like the City Connects, or just like, we had the run around second rules during the COVID era in extra innings. And it's like, I don't see this returning in the same state that it currently is in. I think it'll be the similar material, but I think they're definitely going to have to revamp this. I would take it all off the shelf now and just cut your losses and revamp it now. But I'm sure they'll wait till the end of the season.
Oh, 100%. Because I can understand it if you've got if you've got honestly names that are just going to basically take up the whole embroidery. I mean, good God, we didn't complain about this when Jared Saltalamacchia was literally playing. I mean, good God,
Armstrong's going all the way over.
Yeah, all in Texas, and luckily when he was in Boston, they didn't even have to worry about that. But it was still, I understand that, but it's right now, like Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, and a couple of other players, I get that. But it's just like, if you're gonna put you gotta at the very least be consistent with quality. Right. I mean, that's what we asked for. I mean, contents like you and I, people are going to look at quality on it. They're not going to look at, well, I'm just producing these numbers and all that. We're not just going to do it all for. We want to produce quality over it, because even though, like I've always said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. As long as the quality is so good, and I'm still getting very good compliments from my players that wear them, that enjoy them, and their performances is outstanding, I'd rather take that than take upon, everybody else is on the outside, their perspectives of everything. And it's like, but hopefully they do fix this right. But I'm with you. I would cut these off, and all these general.
You got to cut your losses. And to your point, though, like you made a great point. And my boy Lou from New York, actually, he's a big time Brooklyn guy. He was actually showing us some love, and we were talking to him on Fox Sports Philly the other day. And he was like, "Have you seen the picture of Verlander at spring training?" And I was like, "No." And he showed it to me. And Verlander, throughout the entirety of his career, it's like a plaque. His name is Verlander, and it's just there. It doesn't stick out. It's not a rainbow. And in these new uniforms, it actually curves, and it's actually going down his back. And it's like, if your argument, like my original argument was, well, I haven't seen them yet, but maybe it's because you don't want that rainbow like a Pete Crow Armstrong or like your boys in Boston. Maybe we just avoid that. And it's the complete opposite effect. And it's like, it's absolutely horrible. And it's like, how is Verlander, out of all names, this guy's got less than 7 letters in his name and it's curving? Like, you completely missed the mark. And it's just like, hey, I don't know. If you're listening to this on the Snake Sports Talk Show, I'm telling you right now, this is up to you. Like, as a fan, like, if you don't buy these, they won't do it again. You know what I mean? It's up to us to be like, nah, you just can't put this out and expect us to buy it, because people are going to do that. You know what I mean? But if they don't get the amount of marketing and the amount of money that they are expecting to get from this, then obviously they're going to fix the product. We just got to stop letting, first of all, the league, and second of all, organizations be like, yeah, this is a crap product, but you're going to buy it anyways and you're going to like it. Like, nah, dude, like, we're not wearing these. And it's like, that's where I'm at. I think the fans are a huge part of it. There needs to be pushback. We saw Oakland do that about the A's selling, and I absolutely loved it. And I think there's a lot of different ways the fans can contribute to be a voice.
Oh, 100%. Because I mean, it's like they say, we the people, especially when it comes to like our politicians and when it comes to like, our country, we have a bigger voice than most people would think. So if we do the right thing upon it, I mean, look, I've got good friends of mine that will make customized jerseys, whether it's sublimation jerseys, because I've always been used to that playing adult softball. We've had such good sublimation jerseys, and they are just 110% rock solid. And now I've got a sponsorship of a company, Fans Idea. Go and look them up, guys. Snake Sports is a promo code to use. But they've got customized jerseys from football, NFL, hockey, and even in baseball. I may get myself a baseball jersey because you know what? I mean, I'm walking around, I'm showcasing my brand. So I'm like, I'll get a baseball jersey, and until they fix these jerseys here, it's not worth my money up on it. So well, I appreciate you coming on by, man. I'm seeing you, absolute grind, killing it up out there in Chicago. Where can people find you for everything Chicago content?
Yeah, man, you could always check me out. TikTok, Instagram at theshy.kid. We just came up on 16K, which was an absolute blessing. It's been a crazy start of the year. I appreciate you having me on, man. I'm always down to come on when I see a man have Klay Thompson in his background of any stream. It's my favorite player. Right? Favorite player of all time, man. He's going through it right now, but that's our guy, Klay.
I mean, hey, coming off the bench and he's giving me 35 points, man, I'd take that over anything. I'm like, that'd be Splash Bros in the next phase. So I'm just like, yeah, get the young kid in, but hey, I'm still putting up the points. So, that's just my thought. But appreciate you coming on by, man. Appreciate the work that you're doing, man. Keep it going, and we will see you soon on the other side, and we'll see what the Bears do in April.
I'll see you, man.
See you later, man. Yeah, I mean, it's that's my thing with, Major League Baseball. And like, again, I'm all about striving for quality. If I don't have quality jerseys and if I don't have quality anything, then why am I paying my hard-earned dollars for it? I mean, it's like, these are conversations nobody is getting to the point of. Like, they're not having these conversations. I've had a conversation about, streaming services. Why are we having this many streaming services, which we know eventually it's going to be charged up very, very high eventually, because everybody's trying to find streaming services. I've got mine, but I'm not going to go into it. But the thing is that that's what people are going to be looking for. They want to get closer to the players. They want to get closer to the game. And at the same time, they want to show appreciation for the companies that make these jerseys. I mean, you have no problems at all with Adidas when it comes to hockey jerseys. You have no problems when it comes to Nike putting together NFL and NBA jerseys. I mean, these are fantastic. So why are we having a problem with baseball? That's the one thing I'm looking at, the jersey company. I'm like, why are we having a problem with this with baseball? I understand if you're trying to lessen the amount, because sometimes I think part of this is the material factor. If you got a really long last name, you got to put it together. I mean, like I said, the only person I've seen that had a really long last name was Jared Saltalamacchia. That's it. That was the one guy I watched his Texas jersey that literally flang all the way down to like his side. That's normally what it looked like. But at the same time, I wouldn't ruin the quality of the jersey. I understand it if it's breathable and it's vapor, but don't mess with the lettering and the other thing is too, get the logo on right smack dab in the middle, where it doesn't look like it's a complete cutoff. It has to basically mesh together. So that's my personal opinion up on it, because players deserve this. Players deserve better than that. So you got to give them what they want. Alrighty, folks, that's going to do it here for me on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Appreciate all of you guys, and I appreciate every single one of our guests that we've had on here on the show. All the way ranging from former cornerback Rod Smith joining us in the show, Mikey Hughes, Shy Kid, talking everything Chicago Bears. Now I feel a lot more optimistic about the Chicago Bears and Ryan Poles. So we'll see what happens with the Bears come April. Great content, great stuff from both of them. Absolutely appreciated all of them taking the time, coming on by. Like, follow, subscribe, and hit the bell button, guys. We are getting absolutely hammered with all these great interviews. So this week, Ebwick Koss will be joining us next Friday. You don't want to end up missing that. So we've got a lot of content to produce out for you, the fans, because quality is what meets quantity. That's what we care about here in Sports Wave Network. So get it right, Major League Baseball. Appreciate all of you guys for stopping on by. Enjoy the rest of your President's Day weekend as well, and we will see you on the next edition of the Snake Sports Talk Show. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Take care of yourself.